Welcome guys. This is going to be the third and final part for the Unit 2 Civil Liability series. So in this particular video, we are going to be going into detail in terms of defamation and what it involves. And just a reminder that for defamation, you're going to need to know the 6 areas here and how they apply to particular cases, just like how we looked at negligence. So getting stuck right in, it's really clear defamation is just mainly involving people's reputation or their standing in the community. So as soon as you ruin someone's standing in the community or someone looks differently at a person in the eyes of the community, then we can start to consider it as defamation. So in terms of preparing your definition, you want to say it's the dissemination or a statement or public material that lowers someone's reputation. So could be something simple as just posting a TikTok about someone online that brings down their business, then that is sort of committing the tort of defamation. And why we have that is because everyone has the right to a good reputation without people unfairly bringing that down. When we move on to the elements, this one's a little bit trickier because there are 5 elements you do need to remember, so a little bit more complicated. First element is that the statement or the material was defamatory. So the image posted, the article posted, the video posted was defamatory in nature. And if someone does bring action to court, they need to be able to prove that the statement lowered a person's reputation. The person can't just say lowered my reputation. They need to prove in some instance how it's brought down their reputation, whether their business has suffered as a result, they haven't been able to get ongoing clients, something like that. Second thing, we need to prove that the statement was untrue. So the false statement they put online was substantially they can't be defamed if the statement was substantially true. So if someone's writing an honest review about someone, they're not really defaming that person if what they've said is pretty much most likely true. Third element is that the statement refers to the plaintiff. So this one is a little bit of a particular grey area, particularly if you guys followed the Amber and Johnny Depp case, for example. But they basically need to really clearly prove that whatever material was posted online, it kind of directly or indirectly refers to them specifically, and they can prove that, that comment made is what is causing their reputation to be lowered. But it can be sometimes difficult to prove that it directly refers to about a person if that person hasn't been named directly. Fourth element is that defendant published a defamatory statement. So what we need to make sure is that that material ends up as a news headline, or it ends up on TikTok, or it ends up somewhere where the rest of the public population can see it. If someone is just having a conversation one-on-one with another person and saying all these negative defamatory things about someone, then it's not really defamation because it hasn't had the chance to go across a wide group of people. So it's really important that it's put somewhere publicly available that people can see it, like TikTok, for example, or YouTube. And lastly, pretty straightforward, same as negligence, we need to prove that there has been some kind of harm. So generally in defamation, you're not so much going to see physical harm, it's going to be different types of harm, which we're going to have a talk about. But we want to make sure that their reputation has been severely hit. So for example, if you're an actor and your reputation has been severely hit, it might mean that you're not getting future movie roles, for example. But we need to prove that that harm has actually occurred, which once again can be very, very difficult to prove. How our rights are protected, pretty straightforward, is that it protects our character and reputation, and we want to make sure that we have really clear laws in place that stop individuals from discrediting our reputation and bringing our reputation down. So just like negligence, exact same principle, we have these common and statute laws in place to make sure people are aware that if they do damage someone's reputation intentionally, that they will face consequences if that person brings it to court. All right, moving on to the defenses to defamation. Once again, I'm just going to cover 2 for the sake of keeping the video nice and short and sharp, but just remember, go back and look at the ones you have studied in class because there are more than 2. But the most obvious one is that what's known as contextual truth. So if someone is going online and making a statement about someone, but it's pretty much mostly true, the majority of whatever their video or the majority of whatever their article has said is mostly true, and they can prove that it was only partly false, there's only a few things that weren't correct, or it was only partly damaging, then this is a defense that they could use to either get the case dismissed altogether or reduce the amount of compensation that a person has to pay. Alright, the second defense to defamation is one that is quite common. It's what's known as honest opinion. And basically what it means is that, someone's occupation or their job or their day-to-day activities involves making statements or comments about things. So if you think about someone who is a professional reviewer, a professional food critic, their obvious role is they need to go and they need to give an honest opinion about what has particularly happened. So for example, if they go to a brand new burger restaurant and they are giving their review on the burger and it happens not to be very great, it's got a lot of issues with that particular recipe or how the service was, for example, then obviously they're going to project that online. So what they can argue with this particular defense is that it's used as part of their job, and what they were doing was factually correct, and they weren't trying to discredit something, they were trying to give what their own personal opinion was. Moving on next, the limitations of actions. What we need to make sure we know for defamation is that you only have 1 year to bring forward a claim. So it's really important that if your reputation has been damaged, you have suffered some kind of loss, you bring forward that claim very quickly. I guess because the idea is, once again, the quality of evidence goes down significantly over time. Witnesses, their statements can change over time, so we make sure we put that really firm 1 year time period in place to prevent that from happening. With the possible remedies, we've covered this exact slide on the previous video, but the one point I did want to stress is that generally speaking, when we have defamation, it involves a lot of this second type of damages, which is general damages, because unfortunately you can't really put a price on someone's reputation. So if you're a celebrity or a movie star, for example, you don't know how much actual loss that has actually caused you, because you never know what roles you may or may not have got as a result of someone defaming you. So generally, when we talk about defamation, you'll be talking about general damages used quite a lot, because things like, even when businesses get defamed, it's really hard to put a price on how much earnings they've lost, for example. So really like to focus on this one. The difference with remedies for defamation is often we have what's known as an injunction, and we can use an injunction really effectively to help get you back to your original position. So the two types we have is a restrictive injunction, so it stops the defendant from doing something. So for example, stops the defendant from posting further defamatory material. And then another one we might have in place, which is a mandatory injunction. The complete opposite, it orders the defendant to do something. So for example, there's all this defamatory material online about a business. There's now a court order in place that basically forces them to remove all that defamatory material. So stops them from posting future material, removes all existing material. This can be a really effective really effective remedy to getting people back to their original position. But as you can imagine, in our current day, people often keep copies of things. So if a defamatory TikTok gets posted, chances are people are saving it, sending it to their friends. So it can often be effective to some extent, but sometimes it can be too late and can't really restore all that damage that has been done. All right, with the impacts, mostly the same once again as negligence, but I guess some key points to note is that it can be very expensive and it can attract a lot of media attention as well. So it can be bad. It actually can make the situation even worse. It gets more people to talk about it. Sometimes media attention can be a negative thing. And obviously, same sort of as last video, it's very expensive and very time consuming to take a matter like this to court. So you kind of have to weigh up if it's worth it as a plaintiff to take it to court. Flipping over to the defendant, it's mostly the same once again, but I guess you want to stress that, if they take a huge loss and lose their defamation case, then they could deal with bankruptcy. Their company could be significantly affected as a result of that particular case. So really important to be aware of. There are both impacts for both the plaintiff and the defendant. This should say defendant, by the way. Previous slide on the plaintiff, this slide focusing on the defendant. All right, just to wrap up, just remember we've got 5 elements we need to know for defamation, so make sure you know them in detail and how to apply them to a case. Just a reminder again, I've only focused on 2 defenses. Make sure you look at any other defenses you have studied in class. A big thing I want to stress about preparing for this SAC is that you are going to have to apply these concepts to a case study. You're at the stage where you're most likely going to get given a big piece of stimulus material, and everything you kind of learnt in these videos, you're going to have to apply it to this case study and pick little bits out. So just be prepared for that. And one last plug for task words. Just make sure, I know I keep stressing it a lot, but it's a really good way to succeed on legal studies. Making sure you know what explain means, making sure you know what discuss means, so that when you've got your reading time and you see those words, you know exactly what the question is asking you to do. So best of luck, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next series.